Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to Digital Story Creations. This is actually my first video, and I'm actually inspired to do this because I feel like everybody could learn video editing and video post-production. It's just more about taking the time out and actually wanting to do it. So I'm going to teach you everything step by step on how to do all the editing yourself, a few transitions. So I'm going to go down through all the fundamentals that you need to learn about Adobe Premiere. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to edit your own video. So first of all, this is the first window you'll see when you open up Adobe Premiere. This is like where you'll have your project saved, and this is where you'll open a new project. But since this is a new project, we're just going to click New Project here. And this is the second window that comes up when you press New Project. The only thing I would change here is the name. So we'll name it Tutorial 1. Put it 1. And then as well as the location, whether you want to put this on your desktop, whether you have an external hard drive or anything like that, you would just go here to location and press browse. And here you could actually put the video project file anywhere you want to put it. So we're just going to press select folder because that's where I want to have it. And then all these settings here, you could leave the same. You don't have to change any of these. These are all good. And then you just want to press OK. I'm just going to make my screen a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is the editing tab, right? This is where you actually do the hard work and actually do the editing, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 tabs up here. But this is the main one. This is where this is where the magic happens, right? So basically, I'm going to go down through all the tabs up here and what everything means, right? So when you're in the editing tab, you have your tools right here. This is a selection tool, track, select forward, and I'll show you how to use all this later on. The ripple edit tool, the razor tool. You will use the razor tool a lot. The slip tool, the pen tool. You use this mostly to do like mask if you're doing like a green screen and things like that. The hand tool, and then the text. So if we go to the assembly tab, this is where you're gonna actually drag in your files, right? So right here is where your files will show up. So if I go to File, Import, and then you're going to look through, this is your computer right here. You're going to look through the files you want. I'm going to import from my YouTube folder, motivation. And I'm going to import these. Okay. So after you drag them, you could drag whether it's 1 or 10, you just have to select them, and then you press OK. Now, you could also just go on your computer, look for the files, and just go ahead and drag them as well. It all depends, whatever you feel more comfortable with, but either way works. You just want to drag it here. Now, what you don't want to do is take the file and just drag it to your timeline. The timeline is where you're actually going to do all the editing and the cuts to your video, and then you'll be able to preview what you're doing right here on this side. So you'd never want to take the first video and just drag it on because you want to create a sequence. The way you create a sequence is by grabbing your first video. Let's say I want to start with this right here, and then you want to right click and then press New Sequence from Clip. Now this creates a whole sequence right here to the right, bottom right, you can see right here. And this is, we'll just skim through it real quick. This is just, someone walking up the steps. So we'll go back to the editing tab right now. And now you see the media went away. But you could easily just, go back into the assembly tab and just drag in whatever you want to do. After you start your first sequence and you have your first video done, like with the new sequence set, you could go ahead and drag the second one that you want to use. For example, if I want to use that one, that is not a problem. You could go ahead and drag that in. What you don't want to do is start the sequence by just dragging. You want to always format the video the right way. So to check the format, you want to go to Sequence Settings, and then you can see right here the format is 29.97, which is perfect. Right here, display format. And it gives you the frame size as well, whether you're doing like a Facebook video or, maybe you're doing something that needs a different size. I'll show you later on in a different video how to actually change the size of the video. Right now, it's 1920 by 1080, which is exactly what we need. This is the usual format for like YouTube and things like that. So just press OK. So now we have both of our clips. You could take this line and just drag it through to see what you want to preview, right? So let's just start from here. Okay, so say you don't want to get this part here. You don't want to actually show the person all the way at the steps because you want to put in a part, some cinematic shots over here when he's actually walking up. But you have all this. You have this huge, like, garbage, I guess you could say, footage that you're not going to use. So the way you could do that is actually start where you want to, like drag the blue line to where you want to start. And then you could click C on your keyboard, or right here to the left hand side, it'll be in your tools bar. It's the razor tool. You're going to click that, and then you're just going to cut it. So now you have two options, right? If you want to create the space and you want to drag something else in here, you'll just press delete on your keyboard. I'm just pressing Control Z to bring it back. Or you could press clear. Now, the problem with that is it creates a space, right? Now we have this huge blank space. You could also, while you're deleting something, the best way to move the next file over is you right click, you press verbal delete, and now the gap is gone. Okay? Perfect. Okay, so now, applying transitions. So if we look through this video. You hear a lot of wind, there's some walking. Now, just from, experience, you know that you do not want to put the next clip of this person walking towards the end when he's already at the top of the steps. So, just a rule of thumb, you could go back a little bit, and let's say right here I want to bring in my next clip. So, I'll just cut it here, right click, ripple delete, and it's gone. Now, you don't want to you want to make sure you take the razor tool away, right? Because then if I click here, it's going to cut it. Or if I click here, it's going to cut, So what you want to do in that situation is after you make your cut, you want to click the mouse button right here, the selection tool, and then boom, it's back. You could also do that by, you have the razor tool again. I just press C, and you could click V on a Windows computer. So also, if you see right here, I just took away the cuts. And the way I did that was by clicking Control C. And basically, if you make a mistake, like, I just deleted that, and we actually needed that, all I have to do is click Control Z, and that brings that back into the sequence. So it's really good if you make a quick mistake and you just want to bring something back. You could also find this on Edit, and you press Undo, or you could also press Redo. So depending what you need, you could go either through Edit or you could do it on your keyboard. I like using a lot of the shortcuts just because it makes the process a little bit faster. So now we have this, right? And there's a lot of wind. There's, it's a lot of movement. And the transition isn't really clear. So if we wanted to make this transition a little bit better, we could use the keyboard and we could click where we want it. We want to put a transition right in between here. We could press Control D. And what this creates is kind of like a fade effect, right? So one clip will fade into the other one. So let's just move back a little bit. There we go. Now that's a fade. Now me personally, just because of this scene, I wouldn't add it on. But for example, right, for the beginning of this, say we have something else and we want to fade it in. We don't want it to just start abruptly or to end abruptly, So you could go right here and you press Control D. Also, you go to the end, you can press Control D, and now you have a fade across dissolve. It's what the effect is called. But it's like a fade. It just fades it in subtly instead of just abruptly starting your video. So you could see the fade there. There's going to be a fade here in the middle. And then a fade at the end. Now, if you notice, right, say we made a mistake. You see how the steps take a while for him to start. You can see he actually paused there before actually taking his first step. And we want to see him in the action of doing the steps. So all you have to do is you could click here on the cross dissolve effect, press delete on your keyboard, and we want to start right here where the line is. So we go here to the razor tool, cut, right click, ripple delete. Now, we can press V on the keyboard, and now we have the mouse back. Now we need to go back and add in the cross dissolve so it doesn't start so abruptly. Now you don't have to start it right in the middle. By the way, this bottom bar here is to zoom out and zoom in. If you want to get really technical and you have to do something with the audio or you want to be really close to know what you're doing, you just zoom in and you can move back and forth with this. Okay, so if you want to change the duration of what, like the fade of the cross dissolve, you could just double click it and you could change it. Here's the time. You could change it to whatever you want, and then you just press OK. I'm going to leave that like that because that's fine. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take off the effect right here. And if you don't remember the Control D, you could also go here to the right hand side. Let me pull this bar over, and you have this little section here, and you click the arrows and you go to Effects, Video Transitions, Dissolve, and then the one we used right now was cross dissolve. And you could drag that in to the middle of the clip. You could drag that at the end of one clip, at the beginning of another. It all depends of where you want to put the effect. Now that we're here on the effects panel here on the left hand side, when you go to video transitions, this is where you'll get all the transitions. For example, if this was the end of the clip, and I'm actually going to delete this one here, and we want to add a dip to black, this is what it does. Now, if you get a glitch like this, you see how this bar is? I don't know why it happens. Sometimes Adobe Premiere does that. It could be because I have the recording software on as well. So you just press on another tab, go back to editing, and it disappears. So you want to make sure that what you're looking at is what's actually going to be exported later on. So we want to make sure that you keep an eye on that. To little things like that. So if we go back, you get a fade. Okay. So also you could dip that to white instead of black. And also if you want to do a different transition instead of just a fade, you could also do something that I like called the push. I'm just going to type it in. It's under video transitions under slide and then in push. And you're just going to put it right there. And what this is going to do, it's going to transition this clip to that one. But the way it's going to do it is by pushing one another. So you see right here, it's going to push it aside. So if I go here and I just press play. Now it happened really slow. We could play around with this and go a little bit faster. Let's change this to 10. Might be a little bit too fast. Okay. And then there, you could play around with that, you know. It all depends. I think it looks pretty cool. Now, if you don't want the audio in, right? If we look over here, we have V3, V2, V1, A1, A2, A3. Basically, that's basically marking these bars here where you're actually working in. And if you take the eye and you cross it out, what it does is necessarily it hides it from your template, your sequence. So if I go and play it, there's nothing there. All you hear is the audio. And that also goes for if you want to mute the audio. Let's say we bring that back. Now we can see it again. And we mute it. Now we have no audio. But remember, you're not just muting this clip. You're muting this whole section. So if I bring in another clip, for example, let me see. I'm going to bring something in. I'm going to bring this in. Okay. So now we brought that in. Now this is also going to be, like you see how we have the waveforms here? And we can make this bigger by scrolling on the right hand side. Make it bigger or smaller, depending on what you need to use it for. So now we don't hear anything, right? And the reason that happens is because we have it muted here. So if we go back and we unmute it, we unclicked it, now you can hear it. So it's very good to keep an eye on that, because if you want to mute just one clip, it'd be different than muting the whole section. So to mute one clip, for example, you would right click, go to audio gain, just going to bring this bar to the center, and then go to minus 96. 96 is the lowest you could go in the volume section, and then you're just going to press OK. Now you see here that it's all gone. There's no more waveforms. And then we have the sound on this one, but I don't want that sound either, so I'm going to audio gain minus 96. Okay. And I'm just going to delete this one because I don't want to use that. All right. So now, if you want to bring in a title onto your clip, right, there's two ways of doing that. Let's say right here I want to add a title. Let's catch someone's attention. Maybe this is like a series or a movie or an intro to something, and we want to put a title there. Actually, by the way, now that it did that save, I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth, but it auto saves. You could also save manually by clicking Control S. I believe on the Mac it would be Command S, or you could go to File, Save, and it'll automatically save for you. Okay, it's always good to save your projects, because if I make a mistake right now and or my computer dies, usually everybody's working on a laptop now. If my computer dies and we lose this project, it only goes as far as what you saved, as far as it got saved. So, especially if you're putting a lot of work or you're working on a documentary or something that's long, you want to make sure you have a backup to it. So, back to putting in a title. To put in a title, you could go right here to the type tool. And then, as you could tell by my mouse, it's like selected. So you could click, go to graphics, and you can start typing from here. I'm just going to put this in quotes. The world is yours. Scarface. So obviously you can't see it. It's really dark. So what you want to do is, I'm here in graphics now. I'm in the graphics tab. Usually when you're doing anything with text, you're going to be in the graphics bar. But the way to get there, you don't want to just go ahead and type right there. You could type. It's not going to stop you. But to make it larger or centered and stuff like that, you're going to have to get into the graphics tab. So I just want to select all. Graphics. And then right here on the right hand side we see browse. We're not going to work with that. We're going to click edit. And here's where you'll actually change the color, the shadow, the strokes, whether you want it centered, what font you want, and everything like that, and as well as the size. So I'm going to play around with this real quick. I'm going to make this, we'll work with that. We'll leave it right there. 127. Maybe I want it in a black. Let's see how that looks. Now, obviously you can't see it because I'm selected, so you just unclick. Now, when you unclick and you have this red bar, what it means is that you just started a new text box. You see? So, when you do that, you want to make sure you go back here to the left-hand side, and here's your toolbar. And you're gonna click the mouse. You don't need that, so you could just delete it. And when you have the selection tool selected, you could go ahead and move this over, move this up, down, wherever you want to have it. Okay, gonna capitalize this S. And if you wanted to use white, right? I always like using the white text. We go back here, change this to white. Okay, and it's a little hard to read, so we'll put the shadow. And if we wanted to put the letters a little bit separated, we'll just play around with this. Boom. And there we go. Now you have text. Now we'll go back into editing to continue moving forward. So now you have this bar on top of the other clips, and what this basically means is the duration of your text box. So this text is going to be playing throughout this whole time. Now I think this is way too long. I think we can make this shorter, and you can make that shorter by two ways. Either one by clicking C, and you could cut it, or have your selection tool selected, which is like the selection tool. And then you could go to either side and make it smaller. And when it's the size and it's the length that you want, all you have to do is drag it whichever way you want to do it. So let's see. And what I'm going to do is here, just to be a little bit creative, since we use this little transition, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm actually going to go back into the effects and press push. And look up push, I'm sorry. And I'm going to put it for the same time, which was, this was for 10. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. Now you can put the same effects like the cross dissolve, like the little fade, as well as you could do to the clip. You could do it to the text box, and that does the same thing. So you see how it slides with it? It looks like it kind of drags in with the words. I think it looks pretty cool. Now there are other ways to bring in the text, but I just find that the easiest. So now let's say we have everything muted, and we want to bring in the song. What you could do is you could go here, go back to assembly, or you could open it up through here, whichever one's easier. Passport. My passport's basically my drive, my hard drive that I have connected to my computer. And I don't remember what this sounds like, but let me see. And when you drag in your audio, you're just going to drag it underneath. You don't want to drag it on top because that will actually delete everything you're working with. So if I go like this, it's going to delete all the audio, which is fine because we're not going to use it right now. But if I were to do that on the actual clip, which actually doesn't even let me, I would delete it. So let's go back and let's play that. Now, the song is really epic. It's really cinematic. So I think it's going too fast. So what I would do is I would take the clip, and actually I'm going to drag this up to create some space, move this over, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to change the speed. The speed makes it faster or slower. If you go to 120, as you can see, it gets smaller and it gets faster. But we don't want that. I want to go lower. I want to go slower. So I'm going to put it on 70, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same thing to this. 70. Now, when you do that, when you disconnect the two clips because they were connected together by the push, you just have to go back into effects, type in push, and drag it on. And then let's just change the time again. And then drag this over. So let's see how that looks. Now, it looks pretty good, but I think it could look better. And another thing you could do is basically, so if you notice here, this color gets darker. These steps are way darker than what this is, right? I guess the sunlight or the light that was reflecting on his feet are a lot different. So the way you could do that is by going back here into the effects panel. You want to erase what you had. And you could look up fast color corrector. Now this is under video effects. You would go into obsolete and you would write fast color corrector. The reason I do this is just because it's a lot faster, and you just want to go ahead and drag it on top of the clip. Now whenever you drag in effects, it's going to pop up over here on this side. So this is actually your effect controls, and this is where all the effects would go, and actually this is where you'll do, for example, if this wasn't the right size, you wanted it zoomed in or zoom out, this is where you do it. I just go back to 100. If you wanted it to the left or the right, You just go like that. I'm actually going to press undo. Put that back to the center. And this number right here actually affects the up and down, which you could play with accordingly depending what you need. Rotation rotates the clip. And then, of course, you could play around with these, but we don't need that. What we need is the fast color corrector, which you could see right here. And what that does is basically it allows you to change the colors. So if I wanted to make this a blue or more of a red, you know, that's what would let you do that. But you could also, you know, let's say I wanted to make this kind of look cool and just, I don't know, I'm just playing around with this. Let's make it kind of sunny, right? And I'm actually going to add the same thing to this and do it here, just so both of them look the same. Somewhat here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Kind of looks like you're in the desert. So yeah, you could add a color to it, but also with the brightness, you could click on your clip, press color, and then you have this bar right here. So this lets you adjust the saturation, the blacks, the whites, the shadows, the highlights, the contrast, the exposure. So if you want to just play around with this as well, you can. You could actually bring in. So sometimes it doesn't show you what you're working with. What you could do for that is actually go to Windows, Workspaces, Reset to Save Layout, and now you're in the Color tab. You're not in the Editing tab. I don't know why this happens. Sometimes it's like one of the glitches. I don't know if it's only me that goes through that. But here you could play around with the whites. You can make it lighter, or you could play with the shadows, make it darker, the contrast, you know. And you could get a really cool look just by playing around with this. And as well as the saturation, you could go black and white, you know. I'm actually going to reset everything back to normal and go back to 100 on the saturation. So you can play around with that just to, you know, kind of get the look that you're looking for. And then if we play it back, now we have everything in slow motion. We've added some color to it. Now, I still feel like this clip is way too exposed. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on color and go to the exposure and just lower it just a tad bit. You don't want to go too crazy on it. See the contrast too. You don't want to go too crazy on it. You know, this is color correcting. You want to kind of play around with it to get the best look for the video that you have, because everything's different, you know. So you just want to play around with that and then go back into editing. Let's take a look at how that looks. Now the last thing is, if we notice here, the song keeps going, but we don't need it to go that long. So what we could do is we could actually zoom in, and this is where it ends. This is where our intro ends, and we'll just add a cut right here to the audio. Press V to get your selection tool. Let's delete that, and it kind of ends abruptly. I don't like that. So if we go here to the effects again, we could press on exponential fade and just drag that into the audio. And you could play around whether how long or how short you want it to be. But now the audio will actually fade out instead of just ending abruptly. To export, say this is finished now. To export, all we click is File, Export, Export Media. And then this is going to come up. You want this to be on H.264. If it's on anything else, you want to change it to that. And then I don't go with high bit rate. I think the best quality for YouTube and things like that is if you scroll down, you go to HD 1080p 29.97, because that's the format that we're using. And then the output name is what you want to call this video. So I'm going to call this tutorial 1. Save. And then you want to use the maximum render quality. The rest I kind of leave the same. Leave the same. Some people change this to 10 and 12, but I leave that the same. I don't really touch that. And then after that's done, you're just going to make sure you have the whole clip, which we do, and then just press export. And that's going to export the video. It's going to take a few minutes, depending on how long it is, to export the video. And there you go. You have it. You edited your first video. Thank you for being part of my video. If you enjoyed this tutorial and would like to see more, make sure to smash that subscribe button, and in the comment below, let me know what was the best part of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.